Hi, I'm going to talk to you today about something which I've been thinking of putting on a video for a while. I've perhaps touched on it, and it's the similarities between complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, and Asperger Syndrome. And I have mentioned how they don't always mention either of the other, one or the other, in a book about one of them. The other one doesn't tend to get mentioned. Yeah, I got there then. So I have some Wikipedia photocopies and some look right at the camera, and some notes from Wikipedia. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Let's go down the symptom list. CPTSD is basically caused by child abuse or something which caused trauma in early life, like that, or just as bad in some ways, and whether intentionally or not. Autism or Asperger Syndrome is supposedly a lifelong condition, innate at birth, considered to be somewhat in the genes, although that doesn't really make sense. It's a bit like saying being gay is in the genes for a different reason, or with a different effect. And well, the parents are not going to be entirely the same then, are they? It's somewhat hypocritical and narcissistic of parents and professionals who say that, to play the genetic card in a way, because a lot of times, or it is at least, when the parents don't own up to having the condition themselves, not properly, they might say, oh, I have it a little bit, because it's almost an excuse for narcissistic behaviour. Like, the reason why they go foggy-headed and they go blank when you address a matter, something with them, it must be the Asperger's. The reason why they didn't get something quite right in the parenting must be the Asperger's. And sometimes Asperger's does affect parenting if the parent has that condition, and it would have an effect in itself, wouldn't it? The symptoms of CPTSD: attachment, problems with relationship boundaries, lack of trust, social isolation, difficulty perceiving and responding to others' emotional states, and lack of empathy. Biology: sensory motor developmental dysfunction, sensory integration difficulties, somatization. That's when if you don't know, something to do with, if I know, when things that affect the mind show themselves in the body. If something is too difficult to see, you might go blind. No humour intended. Somatization and increased medical problems. Affect or emotional regulation, poor affect regulation, difficulty identifying and expressing emotions and internal states, and difficulties communicating needs, wants and wishes. Disassociation, amnesia, depersonalization, discrete states of consciousness with discrete memories, affect and functioning, and impaired memory for state-based events. Behavioral control, problems with impulse control, aggression, pathological self-soothing, and sleep problems. Cognition, difficulty regulating attention, problems with a variety of executive functions such as planning, judgment, initiation, use of materials, and self-monitoring, difficulty processing new information, difficulty focusing and completing tasks, poor object constancy, problems with cause-effect thinking and language developmental problems such as a gap between receptive and expressive communication abilities. Any of these things perhaps affect you as a student, you think? Self-concept, fragmented and disconnected autobiographical narrative, disturbed body image, low self-esteem, excessive shame, and negative internal working models of self. straight away, anyone who knows anything about Asperger's, you'd think the bells would be ringing. Esmeralda, they could all be covered by the symptoms of Asperger's, vice versa. An outline of those on Wikipedia: social interaction, restricted repetitive interests and behaviour. Doesn't actually say cognitive, but it's often, that's virtually the main reason why I was diagnosed. It's the cognitive reasons: speech and language, poor prosody, tangential, circumstantial, not sure what that is. Prosody, that's the pitch and the rhythm, the stress on the syllables, the language. I mean, it's people with the condition are often considered to have figurative speech, or to miss the point about, or misunderstand what's being said in a lot of cases, and to go off subject. Motor problems, the way people walk who have a condition like this, for instance, or move, or perhaps they're clumsy, perhaps they have fine motor problems, like using their fingers, using their hands. Sensory problems, sensory sensitivities. Noted that was mentioned with CPTSD. That like an aversion to loud noises, bright lights, things that don't taste or smell the way they want, or seem too much to you when they don't seem too much to other people. Fabrics, touch sensitivity, things that people with Asperger's often experience worse than the general population, but not always, because it's usually not one of the symptoms, it's a few of the symptoms. When you meet one person with Asperger's, you haven't met them all. Maybe CPTSD is a bit more like everybody with the condition has a very similar story. It just the main differences are who they had the closest relationship with. It might have been a parent, it might have been a different caregiver, might have been a friend, or a boyfriend and girlfriend. It's or a boss, or somebody they're in very close association with, but it's the same sort of thing, I think, not broadly speaking, it just is. Perhaps you could put the microscope on that and say, no, there are different subtypes of CPTSD. They don't do that with Asperger's very much, sort of separated, or autistic spectrum condition, as I think they only class it now on the DSM-4 as, in the mental health directory. Yes, it's, I've drawn a blank. Must be my Asperger's or CPTSD. Whereas CPTSD, there is a stress condition listed on the DSM, but it's not that, it's something else. So even that shows where people get lost with diagnosis, and where certain people who don't want to take responsibility for their offspring, their sons or daughters, can get away with calling it Asperger's when it isn't. It could be both together, could be a sort of comorbidity, as I was saying. What I was trying to say before, there are not categories of Asperger's, and I think there probably could be, because my problems of Asperger's are very different. They sometimes separate it in, make the distinction between right and left brain. There's a good book by Robert Millillo, or whatever his name is, that goes on about the different symptoms and characteristics of excessive activity or functioning, excessively different functioning in different sides of the brain. They used to say they were refrigerator mothers, didn't they? And then they said that was cruel to call mothers refrigerator mothers. But I think if you have a parent with Asperger's, or even a parent who isn't, a parent who is cold, it's going to affect the child in some way. A cold parent would definitely cause CPTSD. course, a neglectful parent, a bullying parent, a cruel parent themselves, it seems to be, take the onus away from the parents. I don't know why. Very childist, as certain people have called it, in a world where children are meant to have every right. It sometimes seems that way, the number of criminal records bureau checks we do. And of course, several parents like that never admit what they are. You can't ever say this is what causes trauma. And the majority of people also, like I guess you call them the flying monkeys, will close rank with them. They're on their side. They're not going to. What are you talking about? You must be paranoid, delusional, or I get what you say. Yeah, but I mean, I find this wearying and unpleasant to listen to. So it's only the only person who can take care of themselves is the person who's affected by it. Probably separated, but from the people who've done it to them. Anyway, have a nice day.